So this video turned out to be a lot more discussion around race than I expected, and things get very passionate towards the end. Enjoy.
Yes, the books that I read at the first half of my journey are extremely white. You won't see Harry Potter in this list at all. Like, horrible representation, negative, racist representation. I mean, I'll say it, I'm proud of this journey that I've come on. Hi everyone, it's Bethany here from Beth and Books, and welcome back to this Book Nook. So today's video is my bookish journey. 100% credit to Witty Novels for this idea, who is a really cool, fun, quirky, talented booktuber. I will leave her link below. 100% recommend. Go and check her out. Right, let's get into this, shall we? So first of all, I need to clarify that ever since I was a little born baby, like fresh out the womb, my parents read to me. So that was back in 1996. And one thing I really remember growing up with is Dr. Seuss. I have to start there, I can't help it. It's just where my personal reading journey begins. I grew up on them, and I still think that the books themselves, if you remove them from the person they're connected to, are amazing books, to the point where my bookish tattoo is "Oh, the Places You Go," which is where this journey starts. So "Oh, the Places You Go" is my favourite Dr. Seuss book. The moral about it is all about, you know, like, there's slumps, there's hang-ups and bumps, but you just got to keep going, and if you keep trying, you will succeed. So it's a huge, like, moral story that I think back on a lot, as well as just the fun of reading it. Honourable mentions have to go out for the, what's it called? I Had Trouble in Getting to Solasaloo, which has a very similar moral, and also Fox in Socks, just for the amount of fun I had reading that one as a child. It's very tongue-twistery. We then get into, I suppose, middle grade books. Some of the first books I remember reading when I could go to the library myself, and I was always going to, like, the mystery part as a child, and my favourite ones were, of course, Nancy Drew, and also the famous Five. So why did I love these books so much? Nancy Drew is probably a real classic tale of, there was a young woman doing badass crime solving stuff, and I was a young woman, I mean, not even a woman, to be honest, was I was a child, and I just wanted to be cool like Nancy Drew. Famous Five, I think, was just a flow on from that. I loved a good old mystery. Interestingly, I kind of stopped reading mystery in my late, I don't know what you'd call it, child ages, like once I got to like 10 years old, until really quite recently. I didn't read many mystery books, so it was definitely a phase. Then I have the Narnia entire series. How do I put this? Yes, the books that I read at the first half of my journey are extremely white. There's no other way to put it. There is little to no representation, and if there are or were coloured people in the novels, it was often harmful. When I read the Narnia series, I had absolutely no idea of the religious undertones of it. It was only once I hit, oh gosh, I was at uni, like 21, 22, that I read an article about how Aslan is meant to be God, and, you know, there's all the religious figures and all of the innuendos and similarities and parallels between this world and the characters and the biblical belief system of Christianity. I never got that when I read this. For me, this is a series of, again, children to young adults going on adventures. And when I tell you this was more influential than Harry Potter, I am not lying. Yeah, I've read Harry Potter, the whole series, once, and read the first like 2 or 3 a couple of times. But Narnia is something I have reread and reread. The spines are fully cracked. I have my collection here. They're all orange and yellow. I have loved these books, and honestly, I think this was the first series that I ever fully binge read. You know, when you just pick up one book and have to keep going and have to keep going? That was this. So yeah, 100% Narnia, more influential than Harry Potter. You won't see Harry Potter in this list at all. Then it's the Twilight series. If you've watched my Reading Twilight vlog or the What the Hype video on Midnight Sun, you might have heard me mention this before, but Twilight was my first like fully vampire fantasy book ever that I read. It was my first book with a kiss in it, my first book, well, the fourth one anyway, I think it's the fourth one, where there's a sex scene in it. It was a real moment of reality. Like, I was an innocent 13-year-old, so I was excited when they kissed, and then when I read the sex scene, I would have been like 13 and a half. Girl, my world was just blown. Yes, this is problematic with its colour, with its representation of Indigenous people, and by no means do I excuse that. The book itself, the vampire side of things, really is what got me essentially into everything that I read when I was at high school. This kicked off the fantasy spiral. I don't want to say downward spiral, it was just, or even an upward spiral, because not everything I read was great. But just, it set off a chain of events. So that's where I start getting into my high school novels. And if I'm completely honest, I do not remember a particular novel that I read at high school that is part of my journey. I just devoured every trashy vampire, fantasy, romance story that I could. I hadn't heard of contemporaries. I forgot entirely about mysteries. Thrillers just sounded terrifying to me. And like non-fictional books, I was never interested. I always wanted to escape. So my journey, in terms of how I've gotten to where I am today, just completely jumps high school until my first year at university. That's where I decided, after failing some papers at university, to start studying English. I wish I did it from the beginning, but you know, everything in hindsight. And the books that got me really excited in the world of classics were Dracula and Frankenstein. Now, I'm putting these together because I studied them for the same paper, and the reason why they are so important on my journey is essentially the same. I was blown. I was so interested. I was blown. Get your minds out of the gutters, kids. It was interesting for me. It was the first time I'd contemplated and considered how novels were adapted to film and plays, and it opened again another world for me where I could see books through different lenses. The entire time up until this point of reading these novels, my reading journey was all about just me being absorbed in the world. It was quite linear thinking. These books got me on a path of realising how different people were represented, how morals were explored in a more adult depth. For example, with Frankenstein, I did a whole research essay and delved into how Frankenstein was used as a political image against the Irish. The Irish were portrayed as monsters through English media, when in history they were at war with each other essentially. So Frankenstein as a figure was used as a negative symbol for the Irish. I just got so delved into it, and oh, you can probably see my passion and my nerdiness coming out now. It just, these two books were fascinating. So at this point in time, that's my second year of university, which is about the same time I started my Bookstagram, and that got me really into, I guess, the more popular world of young adult. I didn't really realise at that point that young adult was a thing at all, and I refound young adult fantasy with Laini Taylor's trilogy. I wonder if you can guess what I'm about to say. The Days of Blood and Starlight trilogy. It is a like romantic, highly fantastical, tragic conglomerate of imagery and angst that 21-year-old me was all over. And that started my fantasy binge reading back up again. I guess I should also elaborate on the fact that during my BA, so my age was 18-ish to 21, I didn't have any energy to read books of my own choice. It was all like course content books. I remembered what it was to read for fun again. I remembered what it was to not have to look at how many pages I had to read in order to get points, in order to pass, in order to be able to get a job in the modern societal world that we're living in today. And it just transported me back to those days when I was like 14, flipping my way through Twilight, and I loved it. But what I also loved was that I was now more aware, you know, through reading Frankenstein and Dracula and kicking off the idea that books influence people more than just as a way to escape reality. Like, as a result of that, I really discovered contemporary novels. So my next kind of stop on this journey is The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas. It was the first book I'd read that was really centered around people of colour and how... And I mean, it wasn't a fantasy book, it was real life. This could/does happen to people in real life. And I remember reading that and the whole time being like mind blown about how political books can be, how relevant, how life-changing. Like, imagine being a woman of colour, never before seeing yourself represented in a book, and then picking up an Angie Thomas novel. Like, looking back and reflecting, I realise that's kind of sad, you know? Like, it took me till I was 23-ish. Wait, that's how old I am now. Must have been about 22, 23-ish. That's how long it took me on my reading to find a book or a world of books that represented more than one culture in a positive way. So you weren't just marginalised werewolves, or you weren't just othered cultures and groups of people there as a plot device. It was an actual world centred around different cultures, and it was a massive turning point. One I have to mention on the journey is The Starless Sea. You hear me talk about this all the time. It is my current favourite book aside from like my childhood memory books. It's an adult book that got me out of this mindset of favouring young adult books. And then this is flown on by My Lovely Wife. That was written by Samantha Downing, which got me into the more thriller genre. So that kind of leads me up to present, and it's really hard to put a stop on my train of my journey for where I'm at today. I'm reading so much more thriller. I am so much more conscious of reading own voice books, or at least books with different cultures represented in them, to the point where I think, oh, you can't see it up there, but my current TBR that I'm trying to get through for Becca's Bookopoly-a-thon is, I would say, 80% Asian representation, and that 100% didn't intend to happen. I've just been more and more careful with making sure my TBR list is representative of all cultures and people of the world, and just the way the game worked made that happen. And I'll say it, I'm proud of this journey that I've come on. I started off by, honestly, I don't think it's any fault of my own as a child or of my parents, it's just what was available at the time. Come from this place of whitewashing and like horrible representation, negative, racist representation, to a part where as a book community we are so much more aware and encouraging and voice the benefits and just the world of own voices. And if that's the trajectory that we're on at the moment, I'm so excited to see what happens in the next few years. I just encourage you, if you're not already, to maybe make a record of the books you read. This was a turning point for me last year. I wrote down every book I read with every author and the representation of characters in it, and it was terrifying. I'll leave a video link to that. I was terrified at how much white American literature I was reading. So it's honestly only the last year, half a year, that this massive change in my reading has shifted. And yeah, I'm proud of that. I definitely still have room to grow, and I'm definitely open to conversations around, like, if I ever review a book and I don't pick on the representation of it. A classic one is Serpent and Dove. I remember someone commenting on my Bookstagram. Yeah, I'm not always aware, but that is part of this journey, and I think we all need to be compassionate within ourselves as well, that we're not going to be perfect and we're not going to get it correct first try. I feel like I've been ranting a little bit. I got really into the throes of a little passionate story there, but this is my reading journey, team. Yay! If you've enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a cheeky like and subscribe down below, and leave a comment on your own reading journey. I find this such a fascinating topic to discuss. And with that being said, enjoy all the places you go on your own reading adventures, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!